One of the reasons why the government and the institutions are suffering from a crisis of legitimacy is because the people rightfully have discovered that the government is lying to us all the time. That at the highest levels there is conspiracy, there is deception, and that's all a conspiracy theory is. What is a conspiracy? What is a criminal conspiracy? What does it mean to conspire? It means that people are scheming. They carry out schemes in their mutual self-interest, and they're deceiving people. A group of people get together to carry out a scheme. They conspire. Is it crazy to believe that powerful people do that? Is it crazy to believe that private interests and public officials get together and in order to conceal what they're doing, they create narratives that they promulgate through the media to deceive the public? Is that a crazy thing to believe? That's something that happens all the time, and it's been happening for as long as there has been power. There have been conspiracies, big and small, sophisticated and primitive, and now with technological means, there's always been conspiracies. And so in order to get the public trust and earn credibility for the institutions, it makes sense for there to be a disclosure. And so to that end, the government has promised, in the spirit of anti-corruption, in the spirit of rebuilding credibility for the institutions, that we might start to believe what they say again, the administration has promised to disclose some of the highest level secrets because we are adults and we are citizens and we're entitled to know. And one of those issues is the Jeffrey Epstein case, because people talk a lot about Jeffrey Epstein, but we need to know precisely who he is and what he's involved in. Quick refresher, because it is important to discuss. Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire, but mysteriously nobody knew how he made his $1 billion. He had all these connections in Hollywood, the British royal family, the American government, the Israeli government, Wall Street, also a lot of intellectual scientists, people in universities. And nobody knew how he made all these contacts. At the same time, he owned a private island, which was notorious for sexual exploits that took place there. He owned a private jet where he flew very high-profile people to the island on the jet. And he was indicted several times for sex trafficking and sex-related crimes. He was this mysterious individual with an amount of wealth that nobody knew how he got it, connections, nobody knew how he got them, a background which was very strange, and was caught up in these very conspicuous sexual crimes. And the idea is that this person was probably some sort of intelligence asset. Which country he worked for, which agency, and to what end? That is the question. When people talk about the mystery of Jeffrey Epstein and his affairs and his mysterious death, which we'll also talk about, the question is, because we understand that he was some sort of operative, his wealth was given to him for this purpose. He was introduced to contacts and was insinuated in their circles and gained their trust, probably for the purpose of blackmailing them or using his access to them for some purpose. The question is, what was his ultimate goal? And what was his ultimate allegiance? Who was he really working for? That is what we hope to uncover with the Epstein files. Epstein died mysteriously in 2019. He was indicted for sex crimes. He was imprisoned. And we all know the circumstances surrounding his death while he was in custody of the US government were unexplainable. They say that he committed suicide. And yet people that spoke to him said that he was not suicidal. There's no footage of the suicide because the security cameras apparently malfunctioned when the death took place. Given the knowledge that he must have had about important people, not just the ones that he worked for, but also the people that he knew and might have been extracting blackmail material on, people believe that he was killed in order to protect those secrets. Again, either who he was working for or the secrets that he was trafficking in, and that he did not kill himself. That is, in a nutshell, the Epstein conspiracy. Given that this is not ancient history, This didn't happen 100 years ago like the JFK assassination. This happened recently. He was indicted 6 years ago. He was operating with high-level people in the previous decade and the decade before that. It is extremely relevant to know who he had dirt on, who he acquired that dirt to serve, and toward what ultimate end. Because if Epstein knew Bill Clinton and Donald Trump and members of the British royal family and Hollywood directors and Wall Street billionaires, then it would follow that he might have influenced their decision-making using blackmail. And what were those decisions? And maybe the most important question, who were those decisions meant to serve? We must get to the bottom of it. This is why it's extremely important, but also why you can understand the administration might be reluctant to release the information. So today, they advertised that the Epstein files were finally going to be released, and we were going to learn who Epstein was working for, because that's the operative question. Who was he working for? What was he really doing? Who gave him the $1 billion? Who introduced him to these people? Who trained him? And who was using him? And who was being used by him? Who was unwittingly or wittingly carrying out the directives of some intelligence operative? These are the questions we hope to answer with the Epstein file release. And that is what was advertised today. That is what was promised during the election. That is what has been promised since the election. And that is what was supposed to have been revealed today. Now, this should be something very simple and straightforward. The Department of Justice has that information. The American government has intelligence agencies, just like every other country. We have the best, if not one of the best. So, Jeffrey Epstein was known to the U.S. intelligence community. Jeffrey Epstein was known to the Department of Justice because he was indicted by the federal government. It follows that the intelligence community and the Department of Justice has information about Epstein. Somewhere in the federal government, they've got the papers or they've got the documents on computers related to his case. So it should be very simple and straightforward. Go to the Epstein file, have people with a high-level security clearance review the files, redact those things which are absolutely essential to be withheld, and then release the documents. Why is this complicated? It's not hard to imagine how you would go about doing that. Just release the documents. Instead of that happening, which is to say the documents were released to the public, accessible to everybody, online, or in a public hearing, instead, a group of about a dozen conservative influencers were invited to the White House, where they held a meeting. They received a physical binder that said Epstein files, and then they took a photo op outside the White House in the parking lot. And this was shared on Twitter. This was the Epstein document release. Instead of releasing them on the internet for everybody to see, they gave prop binders to influencers to take pictures with them outside the White House. We've now seen the contents of the binders, and there's no release at all. The documents in the binders are old. They have already been made available to the public, and they're heavily redacted. So we learn nothing from them. So what are we doing here? And there's no information in the binders. There was no Epstein document release at all. And what this seems to me like is a publicity stunt. The Trump administration wants to have its cake and eat it too. They don't want to release the files, and we'll talk about why that is. The Trump administration does not want to release these files. Let's be very clear. The Trump admin, the people that donated to his campaign, the people that run his administration, they have no intention of releasing the files. The JFK files, the Epstein files, or any of it. Nothing like that is going to change. They're not going to release anything that indicts those that are responsible. At the same time, they recognize they need to throw a bone and give concessions to their base. And the GOP base cares about things like this. So I'm sure they thought that they would convene MAGA's favorite influencers at the White House all these numbskulls, give them props, give them official-looking binders that say Epstein files, and they thought that those photos would serve as a symbolic representation of the base getting the information. Maybe people might believe there was something in the files. And all of those influencers were effectively told what to post. They were posting identical things on social media, praising the administration for being transparent and that they received the files. Were we supposed to take their word for it? Did they think that they were going to hand a physical copy that says files and give it to these influencers? The influencers would post on Twitter, guys, we got them. And we're going to take their word for it and say, oh, great, the files have been distributed. Now let's watch something else. Did they think we wouldn't ask what's in the binders? Did they think we wouldn't ask, is it anything new? What does it say? We'd like to know now, not later. We would like to have the information, not entrust DC Drano with the information. So it was a total disaster. I'm sure they thought this was a home run. I don't know who cooked up this idea, but it's honestly just insulting. They thought they would throw slop to the base. Oh, these idiots want the Epstein files. They keep talking about conspiracies. Let's invite DC Drano, Scott Presler, Cat Turd. I don't know. Give them a binder that says classified. I don't know. Give them a folder that says top secret. Yeah, I don't know. Something stupid like that. Put the official stamp of the DOJ and just, I don't know, write like top secret and hand those out to like, I don't know, Scott Presler, Cat Turd, Mike Cernovich, and give them like a water bottle, give them something from the White House gift shop, have them take some pictures outside. That'll make those idiots shut up for a little while. The Facebook boomers will eat that up. They'll love that on True Social. Like, is that really? That seems to have been the conceit. Because there's no information. There's no files online. The files that were given in person are fake. Why would you give the files to a dozen influencers on paper and not everybody else? That literally seems to be the idea. I guess somebody thought that was a brilliant, that was some sort of ass-saving solution. We want to pretend like we released it, but we can't really release it. So, I don't know. Just write top secret and give it to these idiots and they'll eat that up. Well, understandably, nobody ate that up at all. I'm sure some people did. I'm sure somewhere your boomer uncle said, oh, great, Scott Presler's going to get to the bottom of it. I can't wait. But anybody with a brain said, okay, can you put the files online so we can read them? Are we going to have to wait for Jack Posobiec to photo scan every page of the physical binder he received? Does that seem really efficient? And once people started to post what was in the binder, we very quickly realized all the information was already public. Then, once the outrage started, many jealous influencers were upset they weren't invited. The people that actually care about the information were upset that the information isn't public and it's all stale. Once it became clear this whole thing was completely botched and ridiculous and insulting to the intelligence of everybody, the Attorney General, the head of the DOJ, Pam Bondi, came out and effectively said, we'd like to release the files, but the FBI won't let us. So why'd you say you were going to release them? Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, that's the highest prosecutor in the country. That's the highest federal legal official in the country. The Attorney General comes out and says, after this little charade, after this PR debacle, the photo shoot, she comes out and says, well, we can't release the files because the FBI won't give them to us. Which raises the obvious question, why then would you say you're releasing them? Why advertise so you are going to try to trick us, it didn't work, and now you admit you never had them in the first place? She came out today and said, we're not even getting the confidential documents from the FBI. So it was a lie. You thought you were going to get away with it, and obviously it was a farce. And now you say you never had them in the first place. So that's ridiculous. That's a joke. golden age, most transparent, most efficient administration. But wait a second. I thought Kash Patel was just confirmed at the FBI. So your attorney general can't get the files and tried to trick us into thinking we were getting them. But she complains that she can't get them from the FBI. But that's your FBI director. Don't we have Dan Bongino as the deputy FBI director from Fox News? From Rumble? So you got Kash Patel and Dan Bongino running the FBI. They just got confirmed. They were handpicked by Trump, passed along party lines. That FBI won't give you the files? Why not? Well, Kash Patel responded today to Pam Bondi and said, that's not true. We are being transparent. Well, then where are the files? Is the FBI director and the attorney general not communicating? Are they not on the same page? Were they not both selected by Trump? Where's Trump in all this? And so the whole thing is a disaster. At the end of the day, though, we can very simply say we know why this is happening. It's such a tricky issue because the base wants the files, but the administration will never give the files. The Trump administration, the Biden administration, Republican and Democratic administrations will not give up the files on Epstein for one reason. And that's because of who the Epstein files implicate. The Epstein files implicate the state of Israel and the Jewish lobby. And all you need to do is a cursory search into the publicly available information about who Jeffrey Epstein associated with for the past 30 years. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to do and all you need to know. Les Wexner, Charles Bronfman, and Ghislaine Maxwell. Those are the three names that you need to know to understand Jeffrey Epstein and why Republicans and Democrats are not interested in telling you who he was. The dirty secret about Jeffrey Epstein is we know who he was. We know who he was working for. We don't have a document from the DOJ that says Israel did it. You know, we don't have a document from the FBI where Jeffrey Epstein signed on and said, Israel made me do it. But we know, we have known. We know who was on those flights. We know who's providing the funding. We know which circles he ran in. We know who groomed him. We know who his girlfriend was. We know who he associated with. And all signs point back to Israel. Now, when it concerns Israeli, British, and American intelligence, it can be confusing because they all overlap. British intelligence helped to found American intelligence. And Israeli intelligence penetrated both because Jews have penetrated British and American society for hundreds of years. And so there are questions about double agents and triple agents, and there are things like that. But who is directly implicated, and what we could simply say is that Israel was heavily involved in Jeffrey Epstein's network, and that is why they won't turn over the documents. And isn't it interesting? Because you know that's the case. You don't even need to take my word for it, because if anyone else was implicated, conservatives would turn it over. It's a simple thought experiment. Which would be the top intelligence agencies in the world? United States, Russia, China, Britain, France, Israel. If Jeffrey Epstein, the intelligence operative, was working for Russian intelligence, do you think Republicans or Democrats would conceal that? I would think that if Jeffrey Epstein was a Russian intelligence plant, the Democrats and Mueller would be all over that, especially considering that Trump was a friend of Epstein, according to Jeffrey Epstein and photos of them together. What about if Jeffrey Epstein was an operative working for China? Do you think that Republicans would conceal that Jeffrey Epstein was working for China? Jeffrey Epstein was very close with Bill Clinton and high-profile Democrats. Everyone in the GOP is a China hawk, including Trump himself. If Epstein connects the Democrats to Chinese intelligence, would they be protecting him? Would they withhold the information? Obviously not. What if Epstein was working for British intelligence or French intelligence or German intelligence? Would either administration withhold it? We blew up Germany's pipelines. We've consigned all three countries to economic destruction with the war in Ukraine. We effectively run their intelligence agencies and provide for their security. I don't think there's any unwillingness to embarrass those countries in either party. What is the one country that both parties are reluctant to embarrass? That leaves one answer. There is one bipartisan issue that both Republicans and Democrats support and protect. When you look at the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, AIPAC is one of the biggest conduits of Israeli money, pro-Israel money, in American politics. In last year's election cycle, they pledged $100 million to unseat congressmen or women who did not vote for foreign aid to Israel. AIPAC holds an annual gala that is attended by high-ranking members of both parties, Republican and Democrat speakers of the House, Senate majority leaders, presidents. They give money to everybody. You have a Republican Jewish coalition, you have Democratic Jewish organizations that contribute money. You have high-ranking Jewish billionaires that give to Democrats and high-ranking Jewish donors that give to Republicans. It is split evenly. When foreign aid to Israel is considered in the Senate, like the most recent Memorandum of Understanding, which pledged $36 billion for the state of Israel over 10 years back in 2016, 99 out of 100 senators voted in favor of it. Is there anything else like that? Did 99 senators vote for Obamacare, vote for intervention or against in Syria, vote for the tax cut in 2018, vote for the Inflation Reduction? No. No. Hardly anything can get 52 votes in the Senate. Hardly anything can get 60 votes in the Senate. 99 votes for foreign aid to Israel. And by the way, this is why they don't want to reveal the JFK files either. This is why they don't want to reveal the files on 9/11. Because what you are going to find when you investigate Jack Kennedy and the lead up to his death is that John F. Kennedy was trying to register AIPAC under FARA. They were trying to regulate Israeli money in American politics with the Foreign Agent Registration Act. That is until JFK was killed and Lyndon Johnson abandoned the effort. What you would find is that JFK was forcing international inspections on Israel's nuclear program because he knew they were trying to acquire a nuclear bomb. That is until he was killed and Lyndon Johnson allowed Israel to acquire it with the help of Israeli elements inside the CIA. What you would find if you investigated 9/11 is that in the beginning of the year 2001, hundreds of Israeli art students were caught roaming the halls of American government buildings and other sensitive locations. They were Israeli Mossad intelligence agents posing as art students conducting surveillance in our government buildings. That a radical militant prime minister had been elected, that authored in the 1980s a plan to destroy Iraq and Syria and Iran. You would find that on 9/11, a number of Israeli Mossad agents were arrested, filming the Twin Towers on a rooftop across the river as they crumbled, and Israelis driving across the bridge into New York in a van containing explosives. And they turned out to be Israeli intelligence operatives. These are the things you'd find if you investigated that. And if you investigated Jeffrey Epstein, you would find that Jeffrey Epstein received his money through a group called the Mega Group. Jeffrey Epstein got his billions, got his start as a financier with billionaires Charles Bronfman, a Canadian Jewish billionaire, and Les Wexner, an American Jewish billionaire from Ohio. It was they who groomed him. It was they who enriched him. It was they who introduced him to his associates. And they together, running this group of Jewish billionaires, are connected to Steven Spielberg, among other high-ranking people, including Ronald Lauder, who runs the World Jewish Congress right now. Ronald Lauder, who was instrumental in overthrowing the president of University of Pennsylvania, his alma mater, for hosting pro-Palestine protests. And you would find that the mega group, in addition to helping Jeffrey Epstein, supported Ehud Barak, his prime minister campaign in Israel. They supported birthright trips to Israel, where Jews could return to Israel and visit the Holy Land. They supported Hillel, Jewish groups on college campuses, in addition to a number of other Jewish charities. You would find that Jeffrey Epstein's main accomplice and girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who groomed his victims, her father, Robert Maxwell, was an Israeli super spy working for the Mossad. You would find that Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, helped to capture one of the people who was instrumental in exposing Israel's nuclear program, capturing and torturing and probably killing that person. The same nuclear program that JFK was killed trying to thwart with UN inspections. This is what you would find if you just read on Wikipedia. These are the connections you would start to see everywhere. You would find the confluence of Jewish billionaires, Israeli state and security interests, American intelligence, Israeli influence in the British Empire and the colonies afterward. You would find a lot of it without much effort, and you would start to see a pattern. And when you wonder why the administration is botching the release of the Epstein files, all you have to do is ask, who were the biggest donors to the Trump campaign? Well, among them are Miriam Adelson, whose sole mission is to grow the state of Israel, and probably, in exchange for her money, received a commitment that Israel would be able to annex the West Bank with recognition from Washington, with recognition from the Trump administration. Why won't the FBI release the files? Well, ask the Deputy FBI Director, Dan Bongino.
What cause is dear to your heart?
Cause is dear to mine. Israel, defense of Israel.
Who said that the cause which is closest to his heart is the cause of the defense of Israel. Why will the Attorney General not release the files? Pam Bondi. Well, when she was asked what's wrong with the Biden administration, she said the biggest problem is that he allows anti-Semitism on the college campuses. You know, when those kids protest the indiscriminate killing of women and children in Gaza, that anti-Semitism, she said that was the biggest problem of the Biden administration, and her DOJ was ordered by an executive order from Trump to identify every legal means that the DOJ can use to go after Hamas sympathizers, pro-Palestine voices, Israel critics, anti-Semites. Why won't this administration release the Epstein files? Because they're a part of it. Because they are a part of it. Why won't they release the documents? Why won't they just post them online? Why is there a big debate coming from the DOJ and the FBI and they're giving them to influencers? Who are the influencers that were invited to the White House? Mike Cernovich, ally of Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz, who said that he was going to sue every anti-Semite in the country, bankrupt every critic of Israel. Dershowitz, who's critical in Israel's operations. That's who's going to release the documents, these influencers, this attorney general, these FBI personnel, this administration which received money from those donors? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen at all. You want the conspiracy, if you're looking for it, there it is. So, I don't believe we're going to get to the bottom of any of these things. I don't think they're going to release those Epstein files because we all know who they're going to point to. It's obvious. We already know. The information's already out there. All that would do is give credibility and validation to people like me, which is the last thing they want to do. People like me, not just me, but me and people like me, who talk about the influence that is really controlling our country. And they would say that's anti-Semitic. That's all that would do. The answers are out there. If the government releases the files, all it would do is buttress what we're saying and give us credibility and validate our arguments and prove that we're not crazy, we're not conspiracy theorists, we're not irrational hate mongers, we actually do the research and know the facts. And that is the last thing that they can afford right now. That's the last thing the Israel lobby can afford right now, is to give people like me credibility. So that's why they're never going to release them. And that's why they botched it. I'm sure they did it on purpose. Or, like I said, it was some ill-conceived conceit, which is they thought they would do this photo op with these prop binders. They would invite some of the trusted influencers, and by giving the influencers access, you know what's so pathetic in all of this is the influencers. The influencers get called up to Capitol Hill, and they go, oh boy, I'm gonna get a name tag, I'm gonna get a guest pass, and I'm gonna be in the White House, and I'm gonna get, look, a water bottle that says White House on it, because that's all it takes. And the administration is going to give them access in exchange for obedience. The administration is kicking out the Associated Press and Reuters and like real journalists and replacing them with idiots, replacing them with mindless influencers, because these amateur hour influencers, that's all it takes is a little head pat, a keychain from the gift shop, and they're going to go and post on Facebook, most transparent administration in history, we got the files, guys. And that's how you buy them off. And there's a larger point here, which is that we have gone, this is maybe the most important part, because we know the stuff about Epstein, we know the stuff about JFK and 9/11. This is something no one's talking about. We went from one form of regime media to another. 10 years ago, Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post, and you had MSNBC, and you had CNN. You had one form of controlled media. And Morning Joe, or who was it? Chris Hayes said he gets a thrill up his leg when he talks to Obama. And people rolled their eyes at what they called room service journalism, room service media. That the left-wing media, we know, would never give tough questions to the Democrats. They'd give Hillary Clinton the debate questions. They're obviously biased and so on. Well, now we have that in a different form. When Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen and Elon Musk go on Joe Rogan, and so does Donald Trump, is that journalism? When Joe Rogan brings them on and says, hey man, when he asked Mark Zuckerberg, hey man, do you hunt? What kind of gun do you hunt with? When he asked Trump, what is it like in the White House? Is that journalism? When Bari Weiss brings Mark Andreessen on, and Mark Andreessen gave her the seed money for her company, and it's sponsored by Uber and X, two portfolio companies of Mark Andreessen. Is that journalism? Is that a real interview? Mark Andreessen paid for the free press, Bari Weiss's outlet. Bari Weiss's podcast is sponsored by Uber and X, which are both portfolio companies of Mark Andreessen. And Bari Weiss interviews Mark Andreessen and then Peter Thiel. That's journalism now? That is citizen journalism? You are the media? Really? Duh. When Joe Rogan brings them on one after the other, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and they're all in Austin, Texas. SpaceX is in Austin, Texas. Bari Weiss is in Austin, Texas. Austin University is in Austin, Texas. That's now journalism? I don't think so. And now we're being led to believe that when Reuters and the Associated Press are kicked out of the press pool, that's an epic victory over liberal media. And when they're replaced by these salivating influencers who will do anything for clout and access, and they will cover for this administration, they'll cover for the DOD being filled with Elon Musk's people so that his companies will get the defense contracts. You think Mike Cernovich is going to cover that in a critical way? You think Scott Presler and DC Drano are going to be writing about that? When the administration stops reporting the deportation numbers because they're so low, you think these glazers doing tricks on it are going to be reporting on that? I don't think so. Just zip it up when you're done. But this is the great scam that is being perpetrated. They are going to great lengths to portray what is taking place as the People's Party. This is the Populist Party. This is Andrew Jackson with the Wheel of Cheese. on the lawn. They are going to great lengths to create a perception that the Tea Party is taking place. But that's what it is. They have hired consultants, they have hired strategists, and they have gone to great lengths to cultivate this image for that effect, to mollify and subdue the populist base. That's what that's about. The people are angry. The people have been angry. The people were angry at the beginning, 30 years ago. You read about the elections in 1990, 1992. People were checked out then. Voter turnout was at an all-time low 30 years ago. Government efficacy has been in the toilet since Vietnam. People have been checked out. They don't care. And over time, people have been getting angry. They've been getting angry about immigration, trade, war, the deception, the corruption that is perpetrated against us all the time, the financialization, going back to savings and loans, Bear Stearns, the auto, all this stuff, all this corruption, all of this parasitic exploitation of our country, all of the abuse. People have been growing increasingly angry about it for a long time, and it culminated in the Tea Party. It culminated in the Occupy movement. It culminated in Obama's change election. It culminated in the Trump movement and January 6th. It culminated in what we saw recently. The people are angry, rightfully so. The country is changing and we have no say in it. It is benefiting the capitalists, but not the people. And that is why they have gone to great lengths to pretend like we're winning, to convince us like we're winning. They know, Tucker Carlson will tell you that the institutions have lost legitimacy, but he sees that as a problem that needs to be rectified. So how do you restore the pitchforks and torches? How do you restore their faith in the institutions? You convince them that they won. You convince them that we threw the bastards out and the people's champions got in. Trump, Elon, Joe Rogan are running the country now. That is what is so sinister about what is taking place. That is what is so evil about what's happening. People say, why didn't you vote for Trump? That's why. Because that's what they've done. And it has everything to do with everything I've been talking about for the past 3 years. The promise of the first Trump campaign was, we don't win anymore. Our country isn't great anymore. And we're not winning, and it's not great, because the people that are running it are not American. They're not of the country, they're not by the country, they're not for the country. They're corrupt, they're ruled by money, they're ruled by lobbyists, donors, and special interests. And until we get a real leader who can replace those people, who doesn't answer to the power of money, we can never win.